Hello and welcome to Mindscapes, a series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is one of India's leading intellectual thinkers in the realm of international relations, conflict resolution and peace studies. He's currently chairman of the Indian Council for Social Science Research and a distinguished scholar at Jawaharlal Nehru University, where for many years he was a professor. He has lectured and taught widely and impacted India's foreign policy. In many ways, several Indian foreign secretaries have been his students. I'm delighted to welcome Professor M.L. Sondhi. Professor Sondhi, you gave up a Rhodes Scholarship to join the Indian Foreign Service, and you gave up the Indian Foreign Service in some ways sometime later to become an academic. And then you sort of moved on for a while from academic to public service, and with the promise of being sort of the intellectual politician in some ways, or intellectual statesman. Were you disappointed with your foray into active politics from this background of the intellect?
No, I think the most exciting part was the experience in Parliament. And to reach Parliament, I think is something very tangible. Any experience in a parliamentary setting is simply unique. It's based upon the idea of dialogue, debate, opening up of issues, looking at issues from several aspects, and ultimately you get an insight into the functioning of a democracy, which of course it depends upon the mandate of the people. But ultimately, when you reach the Lok Sabha, you experience something which is very valuable.
What was that sort of that experience and insight in concrete terms? You know, we have this very utopian notion, and certainly from an academic context, the processes of democracy, Parliament representing the will of the people, and the representative of the people interacting there. In practice, for most of us, the familiar image of Parliament seems to be, certainly in recent times, chairs being thrown about, furniture broken, and people screaming and raving, and parliamentary time being disrupted. That is the more traditional image today of the parliamentary process.
Yes, I think that image is there, I don't deny it. But I would suggest that if you take a long-term view, then Parliament is a magnificent place to really shape the public discourse. One debate in Parliament can change the entire way in which a country is thinking about, say, another country. For example, I believe that one of the problems in diplomacy is that we haven't linked Parliament and foreign policy enough.
And that is an area of your study and research.
I have specialized in that, and I have a small volume on that also, in which I brought together many people across the world to think on this issue.
Is there a relationship between the potential quality of the debate in Parliament and foreign policy issues?
I don't want to be trapped in that argument, because that would then result in saying that how many parliamentarians do their work, are they using the Parliament library enough, is debate serious enough, do they heckle, do they do it? And then you have to see it on a comparative level.
We are in a national discourse in some ways of how different ideological positionings, as it were, interpret history, interpret contemporary events. You as an academic with a very sort of, how do I put it, an open vision have brought tremendous vitality to the Indian Council of Social Science Research. How do you see this debate, or this discourse unfolding in India?
Now here, if I look back, we ourselves put the clock back. Nobody asked us. We had, for example, a tradition going back to people like B.R. Shenoy, which was that the marketplace is important, liberal values are important, and India is sufficiently equipped to play a global role. I think certain ideas were imposed on us, not from Oxford, but from London School of Economics, and some were socialistic in character. Some were even totalitarian in character. So we put the clock back. And now we look to the era of Reagan and the era of Thatcher, that they brought in some kind of a sea change in perceptions. But I don't think we have to look to them. We have our own homegrown remedies and recipes. We are a very intelligent people. We understand economy. And as I mentioned, names like Shenoy and others, there were lots of Indian economists who were thinking in terms of what we now call privatization, deregulation. So these are very, very indigenous things. These are not being imported from World Bank or from IMF. So I suggest that we revive discussion and debate on authentic sources of Indian economic thinking.
What are some of the key elements of this?
Well,
there is this debate on Gandhi's Swadeshi. Is this the same Swadeshi that BJP government talks about? For you, what are some of the key elements of this philosophy of Indian economics, shall we say, and its applications today?
Well, the most important area here is that economy is essentially a system of thinking human beings, which means that you don't think of iron laws. You don't think of anything which is essentially a trade-off, that you say we'll either have employment or we'll have a certain price structure. The moment you start thinking of the economy as integrated with your culture, with your imperatives of the realities on the ground level, then you can incorporate in it whatever Adam Smith has thought, whatever the rules of the market are as interpreted by Ricardo or even some aspects of socialist economics. But you do not start by posing abstractions like our friends did. Our Marxist friends thought in terms of the labor theory of value. So here is a glass lying here, the amount of labor embodied in the glass. And they built up a whole structure of thinking, which ultimately led to rigidities in thinking. On the other hand, if you approach it from the level of the intellectual contributions you make, the innovations you make, the changes you introduce. So I think the Indian economic thinking is essentially based upon our own traditional awareness of the value of creativity, productivity, profit making, but using that profit for helping mankind.
In what ways is that different from sort of the Western capitalist worldview? In what ways does our view distinguish itself from that?
Well, I will tell you, the latest person to comment upon is the person known to you and me, Thurman,
Bob Thurman.
Bob Thurman. Now, he has come out with a blueprint also, and he says that there is modernization in the external world. There is also an inner modernization. And then applied to the realm of economy, you go ahead and create lucro activity, you create wealth. Neither Buddhism nor Hinduism stops you from creating wealth. But you use that wealth in a creative way afterwards. You have institutions. Now, for example, the Western world has finally found that these foundations are very important. And they are not private sector or public sector. They fill a certain part of the space where you can engage in large-scale ventures. But somewhere wealth has been created. And that was the success of Clinton, that he realized that people would like the economy to work. Now, unfortunately, after the second five-year plan, we were guided by abstractions. We said land must be collectivized. And this was moved at the Avdi session of the Congress party. They wanted to collectivize agriculture in India. Had they done it, India would have been a basket case like Ethiopia today.
I should add that, sort of for the record, that in the 60s you were one of the very early and few prominent intellectuals who were critical of the sort of the emerging socialism of that time. And as sort of really a pundit of international relations, to what extent do you think that with the globalization of the economy, with the assertiveness of Western structures and perceptions of how global economic activity needs to be managed, what autonomy do we really have?
I think in India's case, we will certainly be a major global player. There's nothing to prevent us from making something more of, say, the countries around the Bay of Bengal. India, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, we can work out regional...
Why have we not really been welcome in that sense by the Asian countries? We've barely gotten to observer status, or your suggestion for a South Asian parliament. We're not even being able to make SAARC work. We're sort of resisting a meeting for some reason, perhaps because we want to not acknowledge Pakistan's military dictatorship participating in that. So, would you say that these are grounded in real possibilities, or are these sort of the dreams of an intellectual?
Well, my answer will have to be more indirect. I think in order to create the possibilities for any kind of economic or political adjustments, like gaining access to an organization, winning confidence, you see, you have to produce a diplomacy which is balanced. If you merely use the rhetoric of peace, non-violence, and whatever the peace movements are doing, you create a lot of impression, but you don't create effectiveness. And effectiveness in the modern world is created by a number of factors. Firstly, people evaluate you for what contribution you are making to your own security. Are you strong enough? Do you deter your enemies? Do you make it possible for others to take into account your strength so that they would offer you peace? Another aspect is that you have to stress that your economy is outward looking. Because the world is only interested in you if you are interested in them. If you have a dirigist economy, and you have, what we had in India was, we said control on everything, what the license permit Raj. Then we said export-led growth we don't want, we only want import substitution. Now people don't accept that kind of attitude, they rather become suspicious of you. But now we are a nuclear power, we are a responsible nuclear power, we have also the capacity to offer a lot of incentives to other people, we are a growing market, and we also have shown that we adhere to the rule of law. So I think everything now is coming India's way. We have a backlog to overcome, but anyone who looks at India on a comparative basis would see us as a country with enormous strengths. I remember when Brzezinski and Huntington embarked on their study of America and the Soviet Union, they first realized that all the impressions in America that the Soviet Union is stronger were wrong, because America had basic strengths. In the same way, I think a study is necessary. India's basic strengths, its basic infrastructure, its creativity, its use of the English language, its democratic constitution. If you put all these things together, we will be very soon a much sought out dialogue partner by everyone, including the preeminent power in the world today, which is the United States.
You mentioned Huntington, and in his sort of map of the clash of civilizations, he looks at India as a swing state. Do you think we could become more than a swing state in that sense?
You see, Huntington is a very complex personality. He embarked on this latest civilizational studies career of his with a background which is very different. His earlier books were on common defense, and I had arranged a seminar for him and Brzezinski here in Sapru House in 1962 when they were practically unknown. And so I can see their intellectual evolution. And all these people were very attracted to India. But I think what we did was, we shut the doors. And then again, unfortunately, we did not approach our strengths in Britain, which we could have used the way, I think we are now beginning to use them. In other words, that the Indo-British connection is not one of dependency or of the Commonwealth or anything like that. This was really an encounter between two ways of fashioning the world. And the Indian blueprint was created almost with the very advent of the British. It was not one-sided at all. There was a remarkable Indian influence on Britain. I mean, the British civil service is as much a creation of India as anything. Many of the British institutions. The idea of, you mentioned also the tutorial tradition and all. Many British minds had been thinking of India. So I'm not being an Indian chauvinist when I say this, but I would suggest that the strength on our side would lie in looking at problems now with a perspective which is that we are probably better equipped to deal with problems than any other country, because we are today in those areas where, don't talk of India only, but talk of Indians, the Indian diaspora, which has Hargobind Khurana, and which has Jagdish Bhagwati, and which has, look at the number of people around the globe. All this and our own diversity, and the fact that we have today a government which, in spite of all its problems of governance, has shaped an agenda which is outward looking, which is reaching out to others. And I think the result can only be marvelous if we do not now lose heart and backtrack. Sometimes we have only one problem, that is, we have a habit of snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory. That we should not do now. And that is where I come to conflict management.
I have to comment that going through some of the publications that you have edited for the Indian Council for Social Science Research, I think they do belie many of the fears that you might be carrying ideological baggage to this, because they do represent a diversity of opinions and perspectives on this. What is the, people have considered sometimes India's pluralism to be sort of the cliched unity and diversity. And I think that your work there is focusing and drawing upon the richness of diversity, and to acknowledge difference as a building block, rather than sort of looking for some kind of syncretic, artificial unity there. In terms of the unfolding of India of the future, in real terms, how do you see this diversity playing itself out?
Well, in India's case, sometimes, the diversity is held up by our lack of perspective. And I think we need a perspective all the time. Throughout history, we've needed from outside. Sometimes we got the perspective from Persia and through the Persian language. Sometimes we got the perspective from Britain through the English language. Sometimes we got the perspective from, maybe much earlier, from the Chinese through the exchanges we had in the Buddhist period. I think most recently we can be helped to develop that perspective by our interaction with Europe. Because I have conceptualized on this also, that there is something known as Indo-Europa. Because we can work out more comfortably with Europe today in many areas where we probably share perspectives. And that's why I've started a program in the ICSSR, which is called the Andre Malraux program.
I'm sorry to sort of interrupt on this, but I know it's an area of your passion and concern, it's just of mine, and the issue of Tibet, and in some ways perhaps the failure of Indian foreign policy to address this sufficiently head-on. Where and what do you see India's role in the issue of Tibet, and how that sort of plays itself out in the larger context of India's relationships with China and the changing global interest on the issue of Tibet?
You see, I will not go into the past, but I can share with you what I see in terms of analysis for the future. We cannot visualize any situation in global politics in which Tibet does not recover its authentic personality. So the end is not in doubt, that it will be one of the great issues of this coming century, and it will remain an area which will be very integral to the future of Asia Pacific. I mean, on theoretical grounds you can see that. From a practical standpoint, I think India has to assure itself that it works out its policy in terms of the balances which are now emerging in Asia. And here again, India's strengths will derive from the way in which it looks at the whole Himalayan area. Because it's not a question of saying whether Tibet is going to gain independence today or tomorrow. But the point is that the Tibetan problem today is the way it's advancing in the discourse, both academic and popular, makes it an issue which is unique. It's not even a case of saying anti-China or pro-China. The solution to the Tibet problem will also be the solution to global problems. So it's again, I would say, like they say, optimism or pessimism about Europe. I think we cannot but have optimism about Tibet.
In what ways would that, is that interwoven with the solution of global problems?
It is interwoven in this manner that there's a shift now from Europe to Asia. And Tibet is the roof of the world. I think almost everywhere people concede the fact that it is difficult to think of any solution for the Tibet problem other than Tibet's emergence as a independent center, maybe a sanctuary, maybe a neutral state, maybe some absolutely radically new type of state arrangement. Because you see, the problem with the nation state is, as Daniel Bell said, it is too big for small problems and too small for big problems. So we may have some novel institution.
Jumping to the sort of question of Kashmir, where there is also sort of dialogue currently, ceasefire, and as I said, that as a specialist in conflict resolution, international relations, how do you see Kashmir, the issue of Kashmir playing itself out?
Well, Kashmir would take a direction which would essentially be technological and scientific in nature. Because the role one can see for Kashmir is, it should be a vast technology park that is in your vision, say even 2020. Kashmir should emerge as a place full of laboratories, research institutes, places where people can work together. It should be an elaborate workshop for software, for other things. Now again, how do we arrive at it? I don't think any sort of knee-jerk reaction will help. You can't visualize that Kashmir should move out of the Indian Union. You can't visualize that Kashmir should be totally, pacified in a kind of, with the help of military force. So we will muddle through. But I think meanwhile, nothing should prevent us from taking a lot of science and technology to Kashmir. It's the ideal place, whether we call it the Switzerland of Asia, or we call it by some other metaphor. But again on Kashmir, I do not see any reason in terms of either theory or diplomatic practice why we should not be able to create conditions where in fact the people of Kashmir become very advanced in the use of information technology, in the use of very versatile methods. And I remember when Pandit Nehru was there, and there's a remarkable Indian, Mr. P.S. Gill. He had started the first cosmic ray research laboratory in Gulmarg.
As a student of international relations, as much as a teacher, and the history and the politics of peace on the planet, do you think that we are in fact moving to a more peaceful world, or do you see this as a cyclical process that we will have more conflicts and then we will have more peace and so it will go on?
No, I think we're definitely moving towards a more peaceful world, structurally. Because if you take the 20th century, I mean, you had these dramatis personae like Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Mao, and they became the role models. Hopefully in this coming millennia, beginning with the Dalai Lama, beginning with many others who are on the scene, I think the role models will be more constructive, humanistic, forward-looking. But I would emphasize that that doesn't mean all of us have to turn into peace marchers, because that could be very dangerous. If you suddenly say disarmament, arms control. Now, for India, those who recommend disarmament and arms control and do not ensure our security are not serving any purpose, because then you will get a reaction. So you have to have a balanced diplomacy in which some people play the role of being masters of non-violence and non-violent teaching. Others look to strategic needs, and others should optimize the economy, because the economy itself will produce peace if you give people productive occupations, you create common markets, you create, for example, between India and Pakistan, if actually electric power starts coming from Lahore to Delhi, if you have a network of institutions, if you have trade, commerce, you'll find the conflict level will come down.
Professor Sombi, thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
has been a great pleasure and a great learning experience. Thank you.